Okay, welcome to the channel. I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, book number 4 in the Stormlight archives. This video, I will warn you beforehand, it's going to be a little bit more of an extensive review than I'd normally do, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit more detailed in some of the things I want to talk about. So just forewarning right there. And I will be quoting lines from the book, but you're not going to know when I'm quoting them. You'll just have to pick them out. I'm gonna see if I can throw in some of my favorite lines from the book and scattered throughout the book and see if you can, well, obviously if you haven't read the book, you won't be able to pick them out. But maybe 10 years from now, when everybody's read this book 15 times, they'll think I was really clever here. But anyway, let's talk about Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives. This came out Tuesday. I read it, I bought it Tuesday. What day is it? It's Thursday night. I read this in like 2.5 days. It's that awesome. You know I love Brandon Sanderson's work. If you've seen my other 3 reviews for the other 3 books, right there. By the way, these books are signed. Whenever I do have signed books, you know that I show them off. I get these signed by Brandon whenever I am around him. I hang out with the guy sometimes at Comic-Cons. We do kind of fall in the same writing circles. We do a lot of Comic-Con panels together about writing. I run into the guy quite a bit, and I live in Utah, about 20-minute drive from his house, which brings me to another thing. One of the Comic-Cons I was in, and I've mentioned this in the other reviews, so if we're going over this again, this is for the new viewers. In one of the Comic-Cons I was with Brandon, I mentioned that I worked at the Utah State Prison in the libraries and teaching life skills classes. The first thing, right in the middle of the right in the middle of the panel that we were doing, without skipping a beat, Brandon says, "Oh, you work at the prison? Do you mind if I donate some of my books to your prison libraries?" I was like, "Of course!" So I drove down to his house to pick up the donation. Oh my gosh, this guy donated boxes and boxes of books for our prison libraries. Just goes to show you what an awesome dude this guy is, on top of being an incredible writer. Story out of the way, I just wanted to share that with some of you that hadn't heard that story before. Let's talk about the books themselves. I got 2 copies. I got 2 hardcover copies here. This one is the nice copy that will go on the shelf forever and probably never be cracked open. This is the copy I bought to read. And I want to go over the details of the packaging of the book first before we get into the book review. Because as you know, on my channel, we review the cover art, the graphic design, and a lot of the stuff that's in these books. In every book that I review, we do that. We talk about the whole package. And so let's talk about this packaging, because these Stormlight Archives books are some of the most beautifully produced novels in the history of novel production. Just on an aesthetic level, they are gorgeous. Again, we have another fantastic Michael Whelan painting to grace the cover of the book. I mean, isn't that just spectacular, that painting? Not only that, but we get, on the other side, a wonderful, colorful map of, you know, Alethkar, Javaked, I mean, all of the places, just this wonderful, colorful map. I mean, so just on the cover, we've got, I mean, if you don't buy the book just based on that alone, it gets even better when you open the book, because on the end sleeves, we've got these wonderful illustrations of important characters in the book, and they're just magnificent illustrations. And not only that, but throughout the book, there are just like even the opening pages, just look at, and the book is full of illustrations like this. Full of illustrations. Just great, great illustrations. Maps, pictures, drawings. Every chapter has one of these chapter heading icons, other illustrations, different things. If you are a book collector and you're not collecting these things in hardcover, man, you're missing out. You're just missing out because they are dynamite. Dynamite. So the only thing I wish that it had, and I wish all of them had, there is one thing that I wish that they had that they don't have, and that's a character list. They've pretty much got everything else you could possibly dream of, except for a character list. You know, on the back of the Game of Thrones, they got the character list. It helps you. Character list for book 5. Pretty please. Let's talk about the book. Rhythm of War, Book 4, Stormlight Archives, Brandon Sanderson. Part of the Cosmere universe. All of Brandon Sanderson's books, much like Stephen King's Dark Tower series and It, and all of the stuff that he's written. Stephen King writes everything in sort of this shared universe, like this alternate multiverse type of thing. Well, Brandon Sanderson's, all his Mistborn books, all of his other books, they share the same universe. It's called the Cosmere. Apparently, it's a galaxy far, far away, and there's different planets, and all of these stories take place on different planets. And even from the get-go with The Way of Kings, I was getting a real science fiction, a real sci-fi vibe from the story. And Brandon Sanderson hasn't disappointed in the fact that he is really starting to expand on this Cosmere, especially in this book 4, where we start to see bits and pieces of the other books that he's written start to creep in here real cleverly. I don't know if that's a word. But he's very clever about the way he integrates all of his other books, and they start to pull together in this book in a lot of clever ways. You know, the Cosmere itself, like I said, it's this in a galaxy far, far away, this other little galaxy and little solar system of planets where all of his stories takes place. I mean, it's a place ruled by fools and presided over by broken gods, and that's what we're talking about. We're getting into a lot of the gods of other universes in this book. Alternate universes, other planets, supernatural beings, they're all starting to kind of come together here, and we're starting to find out that some characters who we thought we knew, we don't know, that maybe they are bigger and grander in power than we ever knew or ever would have thought we knew. And that's just the beginning. It's like reading an epic fantasy that's slowly spinning itself into a really cool science fiction epic, kind of like the Marvel universe where you've got the Guardians of the Galaxy and all the superheroes. In fact, that's one of the things about this is the superhero element of these books. I mean, it's just there. It's like some of the characters are getting so powerful and so magical, and they can heal themselves just with the Stormlight. I mean, they break their backs and their spines, and they're stabbed in the heart, but they heal themselves. It's almost like a video game, almost, in the way that, they die. They can die, but just be resurrected and start wherever they left off, But you would think that that would kill a lot of the drama, knowing that these guys are so incredibly powerful. They can fly like Superman. They can be stabbed and heal themselves instantly. You'd think that that would take away a lot of the drama, but no, Brandon Sanderson has worked all that stuff into the story so that it does not take away from the drama. He's got some clever little fixes for that problem where characters can die and do die. And there were some scenes where I was just like, oh, I read this thing fast, but there were some scenes that I had to slow down and reread. They were just done that well. just absolutely done that well. I mean, and Brandon Sanderson knows, this is the trick, Brandon Sanderson knows that storytelling is essentially about cheating the reader. It's essentially about misdirection, surprise, red herrings, just making your reader think you're going one direction with plot, character, world building, all that, and then in a scene that is gripping and just taking a left, just going and just making the reader go, oh, wow, that's awesome. I should have seen that coming. All the groundwork was laid for it. That's what we're getting in this fourth book. The world building itself has already been taken care of for us. You know, part of the charm of The Way of Kings, the first book, was just getting to know the world itself. And then the world was built a little bit further in the Words of Radiance. And then now in Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, a lot of that world building is taken care of for us. We know where we're at, but yet he still sprinkles in little things, especially when he starts talking about the Cosmere. And we start, because that's where that's the stuff that gets me jazzed about this book. I mean, these books are the future of fantasy. They just are. They just are. Let's talk about some of the characters that I like. You know, some of the Spren. I was never really a fan of the Spren that were sort of like these little pixie spirits that each character sort of carried around, like like the devil angel, like the devil on your shoulder or the angel on your shoulder kind of speaking to you. But now they're starting to get really mysterious, and some of them are getting really dark, and we get some chapters told from their perspective. Speaking of chapters told from different perspectives than we've seen before, we've got Venli chapters, which I loved. Some Venli chapters where Venli does some things that couple times where I'm just like, oh, you know. And then Eshenoi, but then we've got our main people. We've got our main champions, so to speak, that we followed through all four books, and that's Shallan. And one thing that Brandon Sanderson's done with Shallan, which has surprised me over the series of the books, is she's introduced sort of a mental disorder with Shallan. This is not spoilery. You know, in Oathbringer, Shallan was sort of played two different characters. She played Vale and herself, sort of like as a schizophrenic, multiple personality disorder type thing. And now in this fourth book, we've got another personality that's come out, Radiant. And so we've got these three personalities that Shallan is sort of playing, and she's dealing with her husband, Adolin. And he deals with it very well. I mean, it's like he's married to three different people. And he's trying to talk to... I really enjoyed that interplay where he is talking to Shallan, but at different times talking to either Radiant or Vale or Shallan and asking, well, can I talk to Vale now? Can I talk to Shallan now? It's very interesting, very well done, and very tastefully done, because I have worked at the prison. I worked in the mental health unit for 6 years. And I know what multiple personality disorder looks like. I know what schizophrenia looks like. And I think he did a very good job of it. And you know, most people that suffer from these disorders, like I work in the prison, so I've seen kind of the worst of that. But 99% of the people that have these disorders, they're not criminals, they're not evil. They're just normal people that want to do good things, that are trying to understand their mental illness. And I think that Brandon Sanderson nailed that part very well. We've got Kaladin, speaking of Kaladin, and just the fact, I mean, when there are duels, things come to a pretty dramatic conclusion here. I mean, we've got duels, we've got contests of champions against champions. We've got, I mean, I don't want to get into it too much, but this stuff involves Kaladin. He's sort of a dark, brooding, more of a dark, brooding character than Adolin. Some of these names are tongue twisters for me. Adolin is sort of the nice guy, a good relationship with Shallan, whereas I don't think that Kaladin, because we all thought that Kaladin was going to maybe get with Shallan there in the end of book 2, but that hasn't happened, and it's probably for the best, because they probably would not have meshed as well as Adolin and Shallan mesh. Now Kaladin and Adolin can just be kind of buds, rather than romantic rivals in that, you know, love triangle that was sort of starting to form in book 2. Well, where was I going? Oh, with the Kaladin characters. You know, since we are introduced to the Venli and Eshonai, and then they get a pretty good chunk of the chapters told through their perspective. But we still do get some Kaladin, we still do get some Dalinar, we still do get some Shallan. And they're all, as you would expect. I don't want to get too much into spoilers, other than a contest of champions. That's all I'm going to say about that. Oh, and the ending. The ending. Well, let's talk about the very first chapter first. Let's talk about, before we talk about the ending. And when I talk about the ending, I'm going to talk about it in vague generalities, so there's no spoilers. So you don't need to worry about that. But the beginning, one of my favorite things about all 4 books is every single first chapter is about Galavar's assassination. Where the assassin comes in and assassinates Galavar, that sparks the entire series. And, you know, each book, we flash back to that scene and we see that assassination through the eyes of one of our characters. And this time it's through the eyes of Navani. And again, Brandon Sanderson, just every time he goes back to that assassination at the beginning of the books, I am like, yeah, absolutely. I love those chapters. Probably one of the cleverest ideas in the history of fantasy fiction, if not fiction, is to just write a series and start every book in the series with the same scene, just told from a different perspective. Oh, bloody good, bloody good, bloody good. Absolutely. 10 thumbs up for that if I had 10 thumbs. Love that. Now let's get a little bit into some of the ending, where some of my favorite characters don't get a lot of screen time until the end. And I will mention who they are, because I imagine there's some of your favorite characters too, and that's Seth, the assassin. He spends a lot of the beginning of the book in a prison, not doing a whole lot, but oh my gosh, towards the end, he gets his scenes, and I loved them. I loved them, and I slowed down and I read them, and I was like, yeah, this dude, he's my favorite character. Don't know why. I mean, because there's a lot of great characters. And then the other character that I love is Wit. And Moash. Again, those 3. Not a whole lot of screen time, but man, towards the end, it's just things get crazy. Some of them turn into monsters. Some of them turn into heroes. Some of them are people you don't even think that you thought you knew who they were, but they ain't. Oh, loved it. Just at the end, and every time each one of these books, Brandon Sanderson leaves me with a final paragraph, a final chapter, paragraph, and sentence that is just, it kisses you off and kind of pisses you off, because he just blew your mind with something that you weren't expecting, and you can't wait for the next book. And I'm telling you, that guy Wit, my main man Wit, who doesn't get much more than like 10 pages of screen time per book, but he's right there for us at the end to blow our minds. Not really spoilery though, because he kind of does that at the end of every book. Anyway, The Rhythm of War. Yeah, I bought this Tuesday night. I've been reading it. I read about 100 pages a hour. So, that'll give you an idea of my speed. And I was originally reading it and following. I bought 2 hardcovers, one to keep nice, one to read. And then I also had the Audible.com version read by Michael Kramer and Kate Reading. And I was reading along for about the first 300 pages. I was reading along with the Audible narration as I was following along in the book. And I'm like, they're going too slow. I even sped it up to double speed, and I'm like, this is taking too long. They're going too slow. So I turned the Audible off, and I just read it at my own speed, and it sped things up, and I was able to just finish it. And I just finished the last few chapters just like 20 minutes ago. And I'm telling you, yahoo! Brandon Sanderson blows my mind again. And trust me, I know what it's like to write epic fantasy and to construct a world, an epic fantasy world. And it ain't easy, especially when you got to interweave an interesting story and interesting characters amongst your world building. This guy, man, he is the best ever. Brandon Sanderson with this Stormlight archive and the whole Cosmere combined. But mostly the Stormlight archive. He has no equal as far as world building goes. This is an amazing world. And thank God we've got a publisher that will give it to us in such amazing packaging with the Michael Whalen paintings and all of that. I just stand in awe of the guy. I mean, his writing, there's nothing extraordinarily special about his writing. Like, his prose is pretty straightforward, and he does that on purpose. I know that he's an accomplished writer. He could write the most purple prose in a world if he wanted to. But he just lays that story out. Boosh. And man, it blows me away as a fellow fantasy writer who's sat on Comic-Con panels with the guy. And here's another thing I'm going to mention. For those of you who have stuck with me this far, another thing about Brandon Sanderson you got to know is I do a lot of Comic-Con panels where I talk about writing and fantasy books all over the country. You know, Kansas City, Hartford, Connecticut, San Diego, Seattle, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, Orlando, Pensacola, I can name them all. And I'm telling you, I've sat on a lot of these panels with Brandon Sanderson. And when most of these panels, you get 200 to 500 people in a room to listen to a group of fantasy writers talk about fantasy. When Brandon Sanderson's on a panel, suddenly you've got 1,500 to 2,000 people in the room. And they are all there to hear Brandon talk. But Brandon's sitting up on a panel with 5 other fantasy authors of lesser stature that don't sell anywhere near him. You know, he's outselling the other 5 people by himself and then some. And, you know, the cool thing about Brandon is every single person, all 2,000 people came to that panel to hear Brandon Sanderson talk. And by gosh, he could talk through the whole thing and everybody would go home satisfied and the rest of us could be quiet. But man, this dude is such a cool guy. I can tell he's purposefully letting every other author get their say in the discussion. And I think that's cool because I have sat on some panels with some famous authors that do not do that they just dominate 90% of the panel. But man, Brandon Sanderson is just a cool dude, and he don't do that. He makes sure that everybody else, all the other authors that are on that panel, get their say. In fact, he probably says the least of us all. I think the guy is a great guy. As I said, he's donated books to my prison libraries. He signs my copies. I will get these signed eventually, one when I run across him here soon. When COVID is over and we can start up the Comic-Cons again, yeah, I will be sitting on some more panels with him and I will take my... I'm a fan. I'm fanboying. I'm fanboying with my... I write fantasy books of my own, but I'm fanboying with my Stormlight archive. Sign it to me. I will do that eventually. 10 out of 10. I've rated them all 10 out of 10. Now let me rank. I wanted to do this. I want to rank my favorite. Okay, so here's the way I think they rank, okay? This is my favorite one. The second one is my favorite one. God, I loved everything about this. I'm going to go with book number 1 as my second favorite. So my favorite is Words of Radiance. My second favorite is this Way of Kings, book number 1. My third favorite is going to be Rhythm of War. I think it's right up there. And my least favorite, I guess, would be book 3, Oathbringer. That's the way I would rank them at this point. All of them 10 stars out of 10, though. All of them. God, I hope you liked this video. I was so excited to read this book and get a video out about it. I hope you watched it. 10 out of 10.